And thanks very much all for joining in today. Super exciting talking about employee benefits here on this lovely Thursday morning. My contact information is there on the screen, and I know my contact information will be at the very end, but feel free to reach out directly if you have any questions after this presentation. Slide, please. So we have a short video, but we're going to skip that for now and move on because I think it's not working properly. And so I'll just give a quick overview of Business Health Trust. Again, we're an association health plan. We're tucked underneath the Seattle Chamber of Commerce, and we work through chambers of commerce all across the state, and to include One Eastside is a strong partner of ours, and so happy to be here with them. Next slide, please. We serve all employers in the state of Washington, as long as you're headquartered, anywhere from 2 to 200 employees. And so as long as you fit that category and are based in the state of Washington, we're able to serve you. And if you aren't, we'll answer some questions for you and point you in the right direction. We have a whole suite of services, but from a product standpoint, we have medical, dental, vision, life insurance, and a lot of ancillary other insurances and products that would make sense from a benefit standpoint to serve your employees. We work directly with Primera and Kaiser Permanente for our medical, VSP for our vision, and Delta Dental for our dental insurances. We are working with Business Health Systems, BHS, for our EAP. And I mention that only because we'll be talking about that later, because it is a trend in the benefits world from an employee assistance program standpoint. Next slide, please. Business Health Trust, our core value is to be a resource for employers, and we really mean that. Pandemic has affected us in many different ways, but at the start of the pandemic, and this is really where the One Eastside Business Health Trust partnership really took roots, and we did some great things together, was we gave away a ton of PPE. We bought, resourced, found millions of masks, 50,000 bottles of hand sanitizer, thousands of hand sanitizer stations, pallets and pallets of disinfectant, wipes, gloves, you name it. If we were able to get our hands on it, we bought it and found it and got it granted, and we gave it away for free to business owners. Because again, as a reminder, at the time, what was coming out of Olympia and the rest of the country was, we got to be safe. We don't know what's going on. It's uncertain. And so let's at least protect ourselves from a health standpoint by having certain things in place, like sanitizer and other things at the business. And a lot of times businesses couldn't find it. So just due to our size and leverage and purchasing power, we were able to find it and resource and then give it away to businesses in this area. So awesome programs. So we really believe that, yes, we sell health insurance, but really we just want to make sure that our businesses and our members are successful. And that's really our core value. So next slide, please. Looking at just some trends from a trend standpoint here, we're going to be going through a lot of slides, and so I talk fast, and so I'll ask you to listen fast so we can get through things here, but a lot of tables and graphs, but again, I'm going to be going through this quickly. Looking from employee benefits, some of the trends that we're seeing is just job satisfaction. And again, you're going to hear a kind of a recurring theme here that there's an upheaval, there's a shift, there's a fundamental transition of employees because job satisfaction is extremely low comparatively from year over year. Right now, it's about 2/3 of employees are satisfied in their jobs. Comparatively, a couple of years ago, it was 3/4. Okay, so we're declining in that perspective. About 47.5 million people quit their jobs last year. Not just were fired, not just companies shut down, but proactively quit their jobs. That's a big deal. 1 month alone, 4.5 million in November of 2021, 4.5 million people, that's 10%, quit their jobs for a record in a single month. So there's this shift of, I want to do something else. I want to try something. I want to do something else. I'm not satisfied in my job. So we're going to talk a lot about talent, retention of talent here. And so this is one aspect of that. Next slide, please. Another way to look at this is for the seismic shift in Americans. And what's happening is the labor force is moving from W-2 work to independent work, to 1099 work. Okay, so what's happening is, again, people are quitting their jobs, and some of them are moving to other companies. But 36% of at least the respondents said they either started something or are doing something different or are 1099 for themselves. Okay, so this is a move to just, I've always wanted to try this side hustle, so now I'm going to try it. And so that affects how you look at your benefits as well. Next slide, please. Because as you look at this graph, which is the number of businesses formed in the state of Washington over the last, call it 20 years. Left-hand side of the screen is 2004, and then right-hand side of the graph is present. You can see there's basically a general stabilization for about 10 years, right, from 2004 up to about 2012, 14, of that's about the same number of businesses being formed. And then in 2014, 15, you can start to see the start of that upward trend in the graph. And then in 2020, it just shot to the moon. There's an increase of 44% of new business formations in the state of Washington this year. That's the same as national trends. So this is a national issue we're dealing with, that people are starting LLCs, people are starting S corps potentially. Okay, and the strongest growth area we're seeing is professional services and the online retail, really specifically. And it makes sense from a professional services standpoint, because guess what? You were a W-2 employee doing something at probably a professional services firm, maybe a marketing firm, maybe a software development firm, maybe something else. And now you say, you know what? I'm just going to go out and try that on my own, or I'm going to start a couple side hustles and see if I can get my own company to take root and grow. So that's what we're seeing here. And then from an online retail standpoint, we're seeing a lot of people just through the pandemic say, let me try out Amazon. Let me try to sell things on Amazon. Let me try Shopify or Etsy or some of these other online retailers. So there's a lot of different things in the mix, but the point is there's a lot of 1 to 2 person companies. There's a lot of business formations, and people are shifting. People are transitioning. Okay. Next slide, please. Talking about a workforce here, depending on the study you look at, between 20 to 35% of all jobs are fully remote. That's not just working 1 or 2 days a week. That's a fully remote job. And a lot of times that doesn't mean it's in the same city. You have headquarters cities in a specific city, and a lot of times those employees are not, either 1, not in the same city, or 2, potentially not even in the same state. And that affects employers as they look across to say, well, I need a kind of a one-size-fits-all for my employees, but everybody looks a little bit different. Maybe I have some people working on the East Coast, but my headquarters is in Bellevue or something. That's happening a lot. Okay? Or people moving east or south of here just for lifestyle moves. Okay, goes to the health and wellness that we'll talk about here in a minute. And again, flexible work. Flexible work has increased 3x to 10x. And so that'll affect things like telehealth. That'll affect things like doctor's visits. Okay, so we just need to understand from a benefit standpoint, our employees are working differently. Our employees have different desires. What does that mean, and how can I, as an employer, affect that? Next slide, please. And so, as we kind of alluded to, the war on talent is real. Okay, as we look at what are other companies doing, from a small business perspective, that means 50 or less employees, 49 or less employees. Half of those are looking to increase their benefits in some form or fashion. And if you're looking at a large employer, that's 50 or more employees, 70% of those companies are looking at how do we increase our benefits. Okay, it doesn't always mean the Cadillac plan. What it means is we need the right fit at the right time for our employees. And what does that mean? Next slide, please. Because as we're looking at the evolution of the workforce, we're going to look at a kind of a 20-year look here. It's a busy slide here, but the highlights are going to be starting in 2002, so 20 years ago. What happened? It's the first wave of millennials. Okay, first wave of millennials are coming into the workforce, the largest population since the baby boomers are coming in, and now we have to incorporate those individuals into our jobs and into our vocations. At the same time, 9/11, right? 1 year later, that's wars in Iraq started, Afghanistan are now, that's the lifestyle that we're moving toward. A lot of the tech boom is now over, kind of crashed, and now we're moving more into kind of more manufacturing. And so the evolution of employee is starting there. Okay. Now, fast forward 10 years, in 2012, we just came out of the 2008 recession. We're now looking at what's next. Now we're a little more stable economically. But what's happening is the baby boomers, who own the most businesses in the US and have for some time now, they're holding on. They're holding on to their businesses because they don't want, they're still uncertain because of the 2008 recession. And so we have millennials coming through. The first wave is now hitting kind of that 10-year mark in their careers, looking for the next change, looking for the next opportunity. And then baby boomers are still holding on to the businesses. So there's no upward progression happening. Now, fast forward another 10 years. Now, millennials are 20 years in the workforce. And now they're looking for that next stage, potentially business ownership and potentially higher level leaderships, more influential positions. Baby boomers are now exiting the workforce. Now they are selling off their businesses. Okay, it's called the silver tsunami. And so now we're seeing, for the first time in a long time, that shift of new business ownership and new benefit packages happening because just a change of leadership, as many times do. And oh yeah, Gen X is in there as well because they're kind of the same as some of the aging millennials. Then now we have Gen Z coming back. So now we have 4 different generations in the workforce currently for the greatest diversity. So we need to really understand what our workforce looks like, and the benefits attached to those really need to touch each person. So next slide, please. Talking about a diverse workforce, now we're talking about fragmented. So this slide talks about how did the pandemic affect us, and obviously it affected us negatively, as we can all imagine. But really, the key takeaway here from the MetLife study is 36% of workers said that their employer is really not doing anything to help them adapt to these new environments. It's the minimum possible. So this is an opportunity. This is a talent war. This is one reason, not the reason, but one reason why a lot of these employees are leaving their jobs, right? We talked about that earlier, 41% are actually quit last year. And so that's why, because their environment is not appropriate for the lifestyle that they desire. So as an employer, what does that mean? We need to look at, how do we look at our employees? How do we support them? How do we figure this out and make sure we retain that talent, because it's almost impossible to find talent. Next slide, please. So looking at these graphs, this is going to be, what is an employee looking for? Okay, gray bars are 2020, the blue bars are current. So you can see the differences, the drastic differences of what people were looking for a couple of years ago and what people are looking for now. And no surprise, health benefits are the number one, right? An increase of 26% to now half of the employees really have to have a great health benefits package. And that could look like a lot of different things, but they really have to have that. The next stage is going to be at the 55%, that next bar there is flexible work schedules. And we'll get into this in future graphs too, but those combination of wellness, both in the workplace and both personally, are going to be key influencers of how you retain your talent. Next slide, please. Because what we're going to see here is what is needed. Okay, you need differences for your physical health, for your financial health, for your mental health, for your social health. Okay, a few years ago, employers took a look at this and said, is it my responsibility or is it the employee's responsibility for this? Well, a couple of years ago, about 3/4 of employers said, well, it's probably my responsibility to help with these different aspects, right? Physical, financial, mental, and social health. During the pandemic, it increased a little bit to 77%, but we were still saying, it's probably still not my deal. The employer responsibility is not as much. Fast forward to now, that same question was asked. 86% of employers say, you know what? It is my responsibility. It is my responsibility to help my employees find and get resources for their physical, financial, mental, and social health. So this is, again, a shift of employee responsibility versus employer responsibility, and who needs the help and who needs to be involved. Okay, next slide, please. And so what we're seeing is, out of these studies, specifically this Mercer study, the 5 things that really are coming to the forefront are the healthcare affordability, a good work-life balance, which we've already talked about, support for women's reproductive health, behavioral health care, and then some benefits and perks that are associated. Next slide. And so looking at improving the healthcare affordability, really the thing to take away from this is, on the left-hand side there is, employers are looking at and or have a plan with a low or no deductible. Okay, as we're looking at plans, sometimes it's obviously there's a cost associated with that, but as employers are looking at this, they're saying, what do my employees want and need? And what's happening is, before the pandemic, this would have been a different story, because at that point it was, let me just offer something. Let me just get something into my employees' hands and let them decide. Well, now people are using insurance. During the pandemic, we are, the uses of insurance is at a higher rate than any time than before. And so people understand their insurance now, people are using it. And what's happening is people understand the nuances of their insurance and saying, you know what? I didn't really understand this before, but now I'm getting into this. Now I'm actually going to the doctor. Now I'm getting that elective surgery. I didn't understand this was not covered. Or, oh, massages are covered. That's great. I need that for my mental wellness, right? So these costs associated and these low deductible plans are going to be more beneficial for employees, because that's actually what they're desiring, because they don't want to pay money out of their pocket if they don't have to, because not everybody's spending their out-of-pocket maximum. Not everybody has that $50,000 surgery every single year. They're going to their free preventive care visits a couple times a year, one time a year, and they're maybe getting sick a couple times a year and using that. So they're not using all of their benefits. They're using a portion. So how do you keep that cost low, even at the expense of higher monthly premiums? How do you keep that out-of-pocket cost low for them? So that's one trend that we're greatly seeing. Next slide, please. The next is the flexibility of better work-life balance. We've talked about this and we won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but the point is this is what employees desire. They just want the option. It's not that they will always choose it, but they just want the option for flexible work-life balance. Okay, so you can see the bars, the first bar, the third bar, and really some of these other ones too are incorporating kind of that flexible work-life balance. The other thing to be aware of is, which is an interesting topic, was in the middle of the page there's paid time off to volunteer. Now you can work that with your company or not, but the point is people are desiring to give back. I think through the pandemic, we've seen a desire for community. And yes, there's a political divide, and let's not get into that, but there's divisions elsewhere in the country. But I think from a neighbor's perspective, I want to help my neighbor, or my neighbor wants to help me. And I think that's actually increasing. So be aware that a volunteer benefit is a benefit actually to volunteer. So just keep that in the back of your mind and maybe promote that if that makes sense for your employee group. Next slide, please. Let's get into some family benefits here. And so looking at parental and family building benefits. And this is from an employer standpoint. So employers, and so some tips and tricks just to be aware of that, what other companies are doing. They're really diving into their parental leave policies. And so that can mean, whether it be a newborn, or whether it be an adoption or foster or surrogacy, saying, let's relook at this because this is a big deal. This matters to people. And so a lot of employers are looking at is what that looks like. The other one to take a look at too is specifically for new mothers going back to the workforce. Historically, there's been 0 lactation rooms or rooms that really to help a mother returning back to the workforce, right? It's almost taboo in some. And I've heard stories of literal dirty janitor's closets being the place to go to, or just different areas. It's almost disgusting. So something to be aware of is specifically for new mothers, how do we incorporate them back into the workforce, because they're an awesome, fantastic population that requires our services. Next slide, please. And then from an assistance standpoint, from both childcare and elder care, okay, similar but obviously different age ranges. From an employer standpoint, employers are looking at what do our policies say and how do we help as we're coming out of the pandemic, as we dealt with, 1 or 2 or continued on years of flexible work force. Childcare was a big deal for an entire year. Everything was shut down, right? Kids were on Zoom, and it was, crazy in the household, right? You got 1 or 2 working adults, and then kids on Zooms, and it was madness. And so how do we incorporate and make it a little easier for employees to come back to work and want to come back to work, to keep them at our workforce? Because again, 41% of people went through that great resignation in 2021. So we want to make sure that our complete package of benefits is appropriate for our population group. And same with elder care. A lot of times family units have come together now during and then post-COVID. And so making sure that employees have resources. It's not necessarily have time off to get for their folks, but it's more of, I don't know where to go. And now I'm the caretaker. So as an employer, reach out to your brokers, reach out to your insurance, and figure out what options, what resources can I have to then give to my employees who are taking care of their elder parents. So that's really the ask there, is resources to give to employees regarding elder care and child care. Next slide, please. Talking about just other needs, this is from an employee standpoint now. The big ones are going to be the EAP services. If you're not familiar, it's employee assistance programs. Things like financial health, mental wellness health, and just different things that are non-insurance related, but are related to just your greater wellness. And it could mean fitness plans even too at local fitness centers. So the need for those is extremely high. Okay. with Business Health Trust, we have these in each one of our plans. And so we've been doing this for years. It's just has now gotten at the forefront of the conversation. So it's just something to be aware of. Next slide, please. The other thing to be aware of, again, we won't spend a ton of time on this, but the support for women's reproductive health has obviously come to the forefront in the last few months here in a great way. And really from our perspective and from this group, the need to understand what is needed and as an employer, how to help your employees, that's what's actually needed. So we need to support specifically our women, specifically around women's reproductive health, and understand just our population group, because every group's different, and understanding what resources do we have available to give to our employees to make sure that they have the options that they are desiring. Okay, next slide, please. Busy slide here. Another graph chart of different years over time, but the big couple takeaways here are health-related benefits are the number one. They just always are. So health-related benefits are the most desired and the most at the top of mind from an employer standpoint. So this is what employers are receiving information from their employees. Okay, so this is what employees are desiring. Health-related benefits number one, leave benefits number three, family care benefits number four, flexible work benefits number five on the chart. Okay, you can just kind of see the graphs there. Just having all of those in together, you can almost bundle them into one and make it 100%. This is the need. Just understanding that flexible work-life balance and employee specifically related to health. Okay. The other one to be aware of, that is a new trend coming out of this, is the number two one, which is retirement savings and planning benefits. Historically, it's been, yeah, we offer something. Yeah, we have a 401k. Yeah, we have some type of other retirement plan, just because we have to. What's the big shift that we saw this year is not only are we offering it, but we're actually making it a top priority. And there's a lot of reasons for that, right? We're not going to get into those details, but the point is people are talking about this, people are wanting it, and people are wanting a more robust plan. So understanding your current plan, and if you've put it on the back burner for a long time, dust it off, bring it to the forefront, and just make sure it's the right one. It could be. You could have the plan that makes sense for you and into the future as well. But just dust it off and make sure that your 401k plans or your retirement plans for your employees make sense. Okay, because that's coming out of this. That's a big trend what we're seeing. Next slide, please. Switching to telehealth. So from an employee benefits perspective, telehealth is now a huge deal. Prior to the pandemic, telehealth was a thing. People didn't know it. People didn't understand it. People didn't use it. Okay, a lot of plans had it. We at Business Health Trust, we've been offering it for years, and we have it in all of our plans. Some of it's for free, some of it you got to pay maybe a $10 copay or something. But the point is, we have it in all of our plans. Make sure you have telehealth incorporated into your plan. Okay, it should be, and if it's not, talk to your broker and make sure you have a package that makes sense. Because with a flexible work environment, this makes a whole the host of makes all the world. Okay, and we're seeing the usage of it increase significantly, as you can see in this graph as well. So just make sure your telehealth is incorporated. Next slide, please. And like I mentioned, Business Health Trust, we always have telehealth in our processes because, again, it's 10 o'clock at night, you have a sick kiddo. You don't want to go to the doctor, or you can because they're closed. You can get online, get on a care chat, get on a virtual care visit, either on your phone or on your devices, and get prescribed something right there on the phone. If you've never used it before, try it out. Ask your either broker or ask your HR representative, and they'll be able to help you with that. Next slide, please. Because what we're seeing is, from a telehealth perspective, it's, again, great resignations, and the healthcare world has been impacted as well, as we all heard. But the supply of physicians is greatly decreased over the last few months. Okay, to the point of you can barely get in a physician, much less a new physician. A lot of times they're not even accepting new patients. So something to be aware of is 29 average days to get into to see your primary care physician. Right? Telemedicine. Think about getting on your phone, getting on your tablet. The average time is about 13 to 15 minutes. 13 to 15 minutes. So 15 minutes of your time just to get your appointment versus a traditional in-person visit You got to drive, you got to get in the car, you got to drive to your physician, you got to wait in the waiting room, and they're probably late. And then you got to get your appointment, and then you got to drive back. It takes about 2 hours. So 15 minutes versus 2 hours, now you got an hour, 45 minutes back in your life. Okay, so telemedicine is a great option for a lot of circumstances. Next slide, please. And then last topic here, I hate to end on a downer, but we can't talk about healthcare without talking about trends of pricing. So the Washington State Office of the Insurance Commissioner, who regulates all health insurance in the state of Washington, just had a press release, and they released rates for 2023 for individuals on the Washington Health Exchange. And so if you are an individual, or if you have employees who are getting their health care through the Washington Health Exchange, they are looking at an 8.18 increase. That's the average. So 8.18, which is higher than, significantly higher than previous years. Okay, so what we're seeing is just an upwards trend, and always you're probably going to get an increase most years, just because your population literally turned a year older, and just lifestyle, right, from insurance carriers and things. But 8.18% is the average this year for the insurance individual market in the state of Washington. And that's a canary in the coal mine for group health insurance. And so if you haven't got your renewal yet, just be prepared. There's going to be a lot of double-digit increases this year. And I, again, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but that's where we're in right now. Right off the bat, most carriers are saying about a 5% increase just because of COVID. The COVID costs associated with COVID are right around that 5%. Different studies have done different things, and different talks have said different things, but it's right around 5% right off the bat. And so if you get anything higher than that, it's going to be not that expected, I should say. Next slide, please. And so again, the reasons for that is going to be COVID-19, increased utilization, pent-up demand for elective surgeries. Okay, we're seeing, and that's why you can't get in places, is because everybody hunkered down for a year or two, and now they're getting their surgeries that they were trying to, that got pushed off for a couple of years. So pent-up demand for elective surgeries. And then it's just something for you to be aware of. Insurance rates are calculated backwards. So rates for 2023 rates, these rates were filed back in May. In fact, some of them were filed even before that. But so we're not looking at 2022 data. They're basing this off of 2021 data. In fact, they're looking at a 2-year look of 2020 and 2021. So insurance market is always playing catch up, and this is for all years. So 2024 is actually looking at 2022 data. Okay, 2023 this year is looking at 2021 data. So just be aware that it's, man, I thought we were out of COVID. I thought the COVID stuff was gone. Well, yes, but we're looking 6 to 18 months backwards to get the rates that we're seeing now. So just something to be aware of for this. Next slide, please. And again, this is Matt Childs with Business Health Trust. Happy to work with you, happy to serve you. But again, we are a core value to be a resource for employers, and we love to make sure that you have good benefits. So if you don't have benefits currently, contact us. We'll at least baseline and see what's out there for you. And if you do have benefits, again, love to baseline and make sure what you're seeing is appropriate and is the right plan.